When the person you love turns your trust into a weapon, the wounds can cut deeper than any physical blow. Today, we unpack the heartbreaking final chapter of MaKhadzi's story. Her rise, her struggles, and the disturbing allegations that paint Master KG in a shocking light. You'll hear details that were hidden from the public for years, until now. If someone you cared for treated you worse than a stranger, would you stay or walk away? It began quietly, almost too quietly for most people to notice at first. MaKhadzi, once the electrifying heartbeat of South African music stages, started posting less, appearing less, speaking less. The woman whose voice once carried joy to millions suddenly retreated into a stillness that felt unnatural. Fans speculated about rest, about new projects, about secret travels, but the truth was darker. Those close to her say the change was not about creativity, but survival. Behind the silence was a fear that even the brightest spotlight could not banish, a fear that her next move could cost her more than just her career. Just months earlier, her life had been painted in gold. Sold-out shows, streaming numbers in the millions, a romance that looked picture-perfect on Instagram. But perfection has a way of cracking when the cameras are gone. The same woman who danced under stage lights with unstoppable energy would return home to a very different world. One where criticism cut deeper than applause could heal. Friends describe her withdrawing into herself, as if a heavy shadow had followed her from the stage to her own living room, and no matter how she tried, it refused to lift. In the beginning, there was a kind of love people rooted for. Two stars from the same world, building their empires side by side. The chemistry was undeniable. The music collaborations magnetic. The public appearances filled with laughter and stolen glances. But behind closed doors, that energy twisted. Arguments became storms, and storms became routine. She learned to measure her words like a tightrope walker measures their steps. The person who once made her feel seen began to make her feel small, and the man she thought would protect her became the one she feared most. One night, the story says, things went beyond repair. They were surrounded by his family, the very people whose approval he seemed desperate to earn. What happened next would be burned into her memory forever. He allegedly lashed out, not in private, but in front of the people who should have been witnesses to love, not violence. The humiliation stung as much as the pain. Being compared to a chicken, beaten down as if to prove a point, was more than just cruelty. It was a declaration that her dignity meant nothing in that moment. And the worst part? No one stopped him. In many relationships, family is a refuge. But in this one, family became a silent judge's bench. There was always an unspoken standard she had to meet, a way she had to behave to be good enough for them. She cooked when she didn't want to, smiled when her heart was breaking, dressed the way they approved. The weight of their expectations was suffocating, but refusing them meant risking his temper. So she learned to play the role, even if it meant losing pieces of herself each day. What she didn't realize was that the performance would never be enough. To the outside world, she was still glowing. That's the cruel trick of abuse. It hides behind smiles. The friends who saw her less often chalked it up to her schedule. The moments she seemed distracted during interviews were dismissed as nerves. But there were signs. The way she flinched at sudden noises. The way her phone stayed glued to her hand, as if she feared missing a message. Those closest to her would later admit that they noticed something was off, but at the time, they convinced themselves it was nothing. They didn't want to believe the truth. Fame is supposed to lift people up, but sometimes it drives wedges between them. As MaKhadzi's career soared, whispers say jealousy began to seep into their relationship. His pride, one swelling with her victories, allegedly twisted into resentment. He didn't like being in her shadow, didn't like the way fans screamed her name louder than his. And so, what should have been a partnership became a contest no one could win. The closer she got to the top, the more fragile the ground beneath her seemed to become. Success, it turned out, was a dangerous thing to share. Leaving isn't just about walking out the door. It's about rebuilding an entire life. For MaKhadzi, the decision was tangled with fear, financial entanglements, public perception, and the kind of love that still lingered despite everything. Survivors often speak of a moment when they realize they are truly alone, and she knew it well. Even with millions of fans, the world felt hollow without a safe place to land. Nights stretched long, filled with the kind of silence that doesn't heal but haunts. She was free in theory, but her heart carried the weight of every bruise, visible and invisible. Bruises fade. They shift from deep purple to a sickly yellow before disappearing entirely. But the pain behind them doesn't follow the same timeline. For MaKhadzi, every hidden bruise was a reminder of a moment when she was powerless, a moment when her voice didn't matter. She became skilled at covering them. Makeup for the face, long sleeves for the arms, and rehearsed smiles for the public. Yet inside, she carried silent screams that could fill stadiums. They weren't just from the pain, but from the crushing reality that speaking out might cost her everything she had built. There's a special kind of betrayal in watching someone you love suffer and choosing silence. Some friends noticed changes in her, the nervous glances, the way she hesitated before speaking in his presence, but they said nothing. Maybe it was fear of losing their place in her life. Maybe they didn't want to stir trouble between the couple. Or maybe they convinced themselves it wasn't their business. In the end, their silence became part of the prison she lived in. It wasn't just him she had to fight. It was a heavy wall of inaction built by people who claimed to care. The music industry has a long history of shielding its golden children. For every tabloid headline that hints at trouble, there's a team working to bury the full story. In MaKhadzi's case, the glamour of her relationship and the profitability of her image made her pain inconvenient. Publicists and media gatekeepers preferred to show glossy photos of the couple at award shows rather than dig into whispers of violence. The machine kept turning because both names sold tickets, sold records, sold dreams. And dreams, in the industry's eyes, were more valuable than the messy truth. In many communities, what happens between partners is considered private, sacred, even. Women are told to endure, to keep the home intact, no matter the cost. Tradition becomes both a shield and a cage. For MaKhadzi, cultural expectations blurred the line between loyalty and self-sacrifice. Elders advised patience. Friends reminded her of her role as a woman. The unspoken message was clear. Leaving was failure. Speaking out was betrayal. That cultural silence isn't just passive. It actively swallows cries for help before they can reach the ears of someone willing to listen. It's rare for survivors to leave without giving some sort of sign, even if it's subtle. A cryptic social media post, a sudden call to an old friend, a shift in tone during an interview. These can all be signals. In her last weeks, MaKhadzi's journey is no longer just a story of a celebrated artist. It has become a mirror for society, reflecting the ways we fail those who need us most. Her voice once filled stadiums. Yet when she needed to be heard, the silence around her was deafening. We are left with a haunting reality that talent, beauty, and fame do not shield anyone from the cruelty of abuse. What remains is a responsibility. To speak up when others cannot, to believe survivors when they whisper their truth, and ensure their legacy is not defined by their suffering, but by their strength. Her music may still play, but the woman behind the lyrics deserved a far gentler song.